Welcome aboard Candid Cockpit. This is the podcast that puts you at the pointy end of the airplane with two veteran airline captains. We'll offer insight into the pilot brain, have some fun, and promise not to get too techy. Each weekly episode has a segment that provides inside information on what's really going on behind the cockpit door, and we'll discuss some industry current topics that might affect your travels. Your two pilots and co-hosts are Les Aben and Mike Strauss. Les has over 4 decades and over 25,000 hours of experience flying airplanes. The Boeing 727, 757, 767, and the 777 were all part of Les's repertoire before he retired. He was also a check airman. Additionally, Les still has the good fortune to be a 21-year contributing editor for Flying Magazine. He has been an on-air analyst and op-ed contributor for CNN, in addition to MSNBC and NBC, among others. And finally, Les is the author of Paper Wings, a mystery suspense whodunit thriller. Mike is a current A320 captain and check airman for a major airline with over 17,000 hours of flight time. In addition to his airline experience, Mike has a diverse general aviation background as an airplane salesman and a corporate pilot flying celebrities and VIPs. If you haven't done so already, please listen to the Welcome Aboard introductory episode. Don't get on an airplane until you've listened to Candid Cockpit.
Hey everybody, I'm Les Aben. Thanks for flying with us today. On this episode's takeoff segment, we will discuss flight delays and cancellations. Seems to be a big topic in the news. Why are they happening? What can you do to reduce your own risk if you're flying of not getting there, perhaps?
And I'm Mike Strauss. Welcome aboard. For the cruise segment, tilt your seat back and prepare for a fun, and I do mean fun, discussion on the reasons Les and I decided to fly airplanes for a living.
And finally, for the landing segment, we'll give you a little insight into crew layovers. We'll have a little fun with that.
We have a favor to ask. First, please invite your friends, all of your friends, if you have friends, to the Candid Cockpit podcast.
And second, if you would, consider sending us an email with a question or suggested topic to candidcockpit.com, and we'll mention your name on air, with your permission, of course.
And finally, say hello to your pilots when you board your next flight and tell them that you listen to Candid Cockpit. Flight delays and cancellations. Why do they happen?
Well, you know, that's something that's been pretty big in the news these days. There's a myriad of reasons, right?
Many that I can think of off just the top of my head. Weather, biggest one, probably, especially in the summertime with the thunderstorms.
Yeah.
That causes delays. And a lot of people don't see it. They may see no weather at their destination, no weather where they're going or where they're starting from,
right?
But the weather's in between.
So is this what you're experiencing mostly is weather delays? Because I knew early on, as we were doing the COVID recovery, there was a little bit more than just that.
Yeah, beginning of COVID recovery was a lot of staffing issues. Now, a lot of it's weather combined with the staffing. And the delays that you get with the weather compound the staffing delays. Because when you have a lot of legality issues with our rest times,
right?
As you may or may not know, and I'm sure we're going to talk about that in a little bit, but then you run into not having crews that can make up for our lost time when we fall out of rest, so to speak, or go illegal.
So I think it's probably interesting to tell, the people might be grinding their teeth, but the airlines got $54 billion worth of money during COVID to keep our infrastructure alive in this country.
Correct.
And they did great shutting things down, but starting things back up. We had airplanes parked all over the world, all over the country mostly, but that's a process in itself.
Well, and you had employees parked all over the world too.
Right.
Because everybody took a lot of early retirements, layoffs, furloughs, part-time, full-time people became part-time people. And I think a lot of people during that time frame either went and found another job because they needed a job.
Right.
And now it's tough to get the airline people back to the airlines.
So would you agree at this point, I haven't been on the line, obviously being retired. Would you agree at this point that the scheduling aspect to it is that all of a sudden the airlines realized they had this pent-up demand and they just can't keep up with it? And we're still at that point now.
That's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. The demand is still outweighing what the airlines can provide right now.
Right.
And that's a problem. I mean, and it's frustrating for everybody. I mean, look at just a very recent event, union pilots picketing, and they're not picketing for wages and contracts. They're picketing to bring awareness to the shortages that are actually causing all these issues. They're just as frustrated as the customers that are trying to fly.
Right, and I think that's important to tell everybody is that when you see a picket line with pilots or anybody related to the airlines, it's not necessarily about compensation.
No.
In this particular case, you're absolutely right. It's about scheduling and the ability for pilots and passengers to get where they're supposed to be going. I mean, not only do you as a passenger want to get to Disney World, from New York, but as a pilot, you want to get there as well. Because that's part of your schedule and part of your pay depends on it.
Yeah, you get paid on where you go and when you fly.
Right.
But also, let's say, here's a classic flight crew issue. Get home-itis. Last day of their trip, it could be a multi-day trip. They want to get home too. And if they're delayed or canceled, guess what? They're stuck in the same situation that you, the passenger, are, because you can't get home, but neither can your flight crew.
But absolutely. But I mean, the bottom line is we feel just as bad for the passengers. I mean, we do, we want to get home as well. But I mean, it's frustrating just to watch our customer. I mean, this is what supports our salaries.
No, agreed. Yeah, our customer writes our check flat out. And if you can't get them to where they want to be, they might not write your check anymore. But it's also frustrating, not just from a monetary aspect. It's frustrating because you feel for them because you need to get to where you want to be. And it could be, I mean, there's a myriad of reasons that our passengers fly, and we have no control over the ability to make sure 100% that they're going to get there. Right. It could be a family emergency, it could just be a vacation, but either one of them is just as important to that particular passenger that's traveling. They want to get there, just like our lives are bound by that as well. We want to get to where we're going, whether it's in getting you there or just getting ourselves home.
And I think sort of going back to all the factors that came into the cancellation process is that we had to bring back those furloughees or the people that were not current flying the airplanes. We'll get into currency.
Good point. Training them. Yeah.
Training them. But here's the thing. I mean, airlines know how to train pilots, but there's a currency requirement for them to continue to fly the airplane safely for our passengers.
Exactly.
So the problem is, the infrastructure isn't there, right? We've got the same amount of instructors, the same buildings, the same simulators. I think airlines are starting to add to that.
Correct.
But it's still bottleneck.
You actually don't have as many instructors because the instructors, when a lot of pilots took retirement or furloughs, now you didn't have the training events that were required. So guess what? The instructors took early retirement and furlough or part-time work. And again, trying to get them to come back as well.
True.
Yeah, and the bottleneck is the perfect way to put it because now you've got all these people that need to come through. There's a finite amount of simulators. There's a finite amount of instructors.
Right.
And now you've got more pilots trying to go through that same funnel at the same time.
And don't forget this one, and we'll get on this topic. We'll tease this one a little bit. Is that we've got new hires.
Yeah, exactly.
We got new hires. So now you've got the people that have to get through recurrent, and at the same time, we're bringing in new
people to make up for the people we lost.
Right.
But we're bringing in more than we lost.
Right.
Because the demand's calling it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, the question is, how can me as Joe passenger or Jill passenger get on an airplane with the confidence that I'm going to get to where I want to go? We have some tools that we could throw out to passengers, I think, don't you?
Agreed. Think about your flexibility of your travel. Think about when you're going to travel. Don't pick the busiest days of the week to travel. Friday, Sunday, Monday are the busiest days. If you can travel Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday,
right,
you stand a lot better chance because there's fewer flights, but there's also fewer people, therefore allowing to a better chance of not having cancellations that you see on the big busy weekends.
And then the other thing,
travel days, I should say.
Yeah, if you've got that kind of flexibility.
Correct.
So,
which isn't always the case. Look at a businessman; he needs to travel sometime Monday through Friday, as a rule.
Right. The other aspect is, as painful as it can be, take the early morning flight.
Oh yeah,
because it's the flexibility increases with that option, because it decreases as the day goes on because there's less departures as the day progresses.
Well, and then you have the domino effect. If you have one delay in the morning, that's going to cause the next delay, the next delay, the next delay.
Right.
So now it's going to peak in the evening, and then you're going to throw in during the summer, let's say afternoon thunderstorms,
right,
which just causes even more havoc.
Right. And then you get to the winter and the whole...
Yeah, find a good cup of coffee, find an early flight.
Yeah, and so when you get those delays the scenario you just came up with, then people start getting tight on their connections or losing those connections. This is the most intricate jigsaw puzzle I think anybody can ever witness. It's amazing it works most of the time.
Most of the time it is. Yeah. And it still boggles my mind. I mean, you were in it for 34 years. I'm in it for 17 years, and I'm still sitting there going, that works. Okay, it does work.
It does. It really does for the most part. I mean, we unfortunately, we do the worst. We see the worst of it on the news.
Well, and I know you're involved with media a lot, but I hate to say it, but good news doesn't necessarily sell.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
So yeah, you're going to see the bad.
Here's something that I did a little checking on, and I use this program, Flight Aware, to figure out, hey, is my inbound flight? A lot of the airlines are doing it now, but if flightaware.com, I'd highly recommend. It will show you where your flight's coming from.
Yeah, it's a great app, and it does, and it keeps getting better and better and more accurate. So yeah, you can see where your airplane's coming. You can go look probably 4 or 5 flights. You can probably see where the airplane started that morning to see, and then that's also a good tool. A good visual aid to yourself to understand just how that domino effect works.
And here's another good part that I saw about Flight Aware was that it has a thing called a misery map. So it actually gives, the areas of the country that are experience the most delays. Miserable. But they will, I think they go back 2 or 3 days with cancellations, delays, and so on and so forth. They actually parse it out with what airlines. So, So it's, if you got some time after a delay.
Time to spare, travel by air.
Yeah,
but no, it's a good learning. Yeah. And, most people that we're talking to right now, they don't understand how the airline industry works. That's our job, is to explain what happens.
Right.
And this is probably, I would say, short of lost luggage, delays and cancellations are the biggest frustration for a passenger.
Absolutely.
And this is a great way to understand that they're not doing it on purpose. An airline does not want to delay your flight. An airline does not want to cancel your flight. The airplane's not in the sky. It's not making money.
Right. But primary goal?
Safety.
So
yeah. And sometimes a lot of people don't understand that either.
Yeah. That has to take precedence.
Which also, we didn't even talk about mechanical delays.
Yeah, well, things break, and it's frustrating.
But again, safety. You don't want to take a broken airplane into the sky.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Anything else you think we can think of?
No, just, if you're traveling and you're delayed, think about us, think about what we've told you, and maybe take a deep breath before you yell at the gate agent.
Yeah, they don't get paid a ton of money, and they really are trying to do their best job, and some days it's just, no matter what they do,
they don't want you to be late anyway.
No,
as well, because guess what? Then they're stuck with you.
Yeah.
At the podium. So they want to see you on your way.
Yeah, they really.
Well,
do.
Good.
Okay.
Anything you can add?
No, I think we got it. So we're on to our cruise segment, and I think people might have some fun with this a little bit, and maybe get some inside info on how you and I, why the hell we decided to fly. I mean, what was it that possessed us to go, I think I want to do that for a living, or just at least enjoy it maybe as a hobby. But you've got a really fun story. So why don't you start with that?
And mine's not typical. I learned to fly because I got tired of driving to Mexico to go surfing. And that's fact. I was in college. I've always loved airplanes. I've always loved cars and airplanes and things that move. And but I never really thought of it being a career. I never even thought of me actually flying. Until one day, I was a sophomore in college. I was down in a place called Scorpion Bay, Mexico, and we would drive 6 hours from San Diego to go down there to surf. And one day, here's this guy flying around in a Cessna 180, lands it on the beach, and there was a makeshift airstrip on the beach, charted even, and pulls a surfboard out. And I'm sitting out there in the lineup going, oh, class genius. Now, remember I mentioned I was in college, so I didn't have a lot of funds, but I went home and started taking a couple of flying lessons, and that hooked me. I couldn't follow up for several more years because when I got out of college, real life got in the way, job, so on and so forth. And it wasn't until 7 years after college that I actually got my private license. And I was satisfied with that. I was in a great job in the auto industry, having fun. And one day I woke up and went, I want to get into aviation. And went to work for a flight school as a flight school manager. And I was surprised they hired me because I wasn't even a pilot. And they said, well, you manage people. I said, yeah, that's what I do. And they said, great. Here's some people, manage them. And it just led me back into...
Poor judgment, of course.
Yeah, pilot.
Yeah.
Poor judgment on their part.
Yeah, on their part.
Well, I'm sitting here. Poor judgment on my part. And then one thing led to another. I went to work for an aircraft manufacturer, kind of in the same role that I worked for in the automotive industry. Met a guy, wanted me to fly his jet, his airplane personally. And he wanted a jet, and I didn't have any jet experience. He goes, well, what's it take to go fly a jet? I said, well, I got to go to school. All right, great. Go to school, buy us a jet. One thing led to another. There I was, led to a bigger jet. And then I started realizing, it'd be nice to have a schedule. How do I get a schedule with this kind of gig?
So it all went downhill from there.
Yeah, exactly. Straight to the airlines. And it was a very untypical route to left seat in a, I know you hate to say this, you hate this, but it's an Airbus. It's still an airplane. It flies like an airplane. And we'll talk about how Airbus flies just like a Boeing does. But yeah, so very untypical route. You are more of the typical route. You knew from, you tell your story. You were 6 years old.
Well, if you're done with your story.
The surf was pretty good in Scorpion Bay. I'd like to go. What time is it?
Yeah, my story, I don't know. I suppose it's typical in the focus aspect of it. I don't think a lot of people were 6 years old and they said they wanted to be an airline pilot.
I think you'd be amazed at how many people I've run across that do. They knew from an early age, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I wonder if we see that now anymore, but...
I should start asking some of the guys I'm flying with.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, that's how I started. With, matter of fact, behind us is a picture of a Lockheed Electra, and Anyhow, my mother took me on board for a flight from Syracuse, New York, of all places, and where I used to live, and I think we were headed to New York City. Anyhow, and the story goes that I got a visit in the cockpit, and they signed a certificate that said I could appear for an interview 20 years from that date.
That's amazing.
And and I won't tell the date because then everybody will know how old I am. But I did. I showed up at the door. I gave them a little advance warning, and I showed up. But the reason I wanted to do it was because there was just something so glamorous, something so fascinating about, to me, even at that age, about flying an airplane after being exposed to it.
Right.
And you probably get that experience when you get kids in the cockpit, right?
I always have wings in my pocket.
Yeah.
And it actually amazes people that I do that. Because
I'm surprised because we always did the same. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I'm sure there's a lot more than I know of, but yeah, I don't see that anymore. I don't see the pilots getting all enthusiastic with kids. I hear a kid outside the cockpit door, I hear mom or dad say, "Hey, look, there's the cockpit.
Come on in."
And the first thing I say is I get up out of my seat and I say, "Have a seat."
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's take some pictures and play with the video game.
I can't tell you how many pictures I've taken with a kid in the cockpit seat.
It's fun. And then I'm sure you've had this too. At the end of the trip, they've left a napkin for you with a little note. Hey, thanks for letting me fly, or something like that. Yeah.
And you never know how many kids you've touched. It's just amazing. But to me, that's how I started. And then I stopped. I should have smelled roses along the way, but I was focused on being an airline pilot. Not only an airline pilot, but an airline pilot for American Airlines,
which was who you rode on that flight.
That's correct.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's the airplane. And matter of fact, my high school guidance counselor asked me what I wanted to do during career day or whatever it was, and I said, I want to be an airline pilot. I want to be an airline pilot for American Airlines. And she about threw me out. She said, look at your English related writing stuff. Not that I'm good at it now anyhow, but.
Don't you write?
Nah, somebody says I do. So anyhow, even my high school guidance counselor thought it was a crazy idea.
They're not in your mind. They don't have your dream.
They don't.
But you lived your dream. I mean,
yeah.
That not only to say I want to be an airline pilot, but say I want to be an airline pilot for this airline, and then go do it.
You know what was so cool? And thank you for saying that. What was so cool? You remind me of something. When I was about a month away from retirement, I got on the employee bus in Kennedy, and there was this young guy, and he was eyeballing me, and I could tell, there was some recognition, and so he said to me, "You're the guy," which I've got before, because I write for Flying Magazine, and some folks recognize the mustache. So
it's hard to miss. Microphone's not covering that up, is it?
Yeah, one can only hope. So, in any case, he said, "You're the reason I'm here." And I when he asked me, if I'm the guy, I said, "No, I'm the evil twin brother." Totally dismissed my humor. Not that it was any good anyhow, but he said,
my wife does that. She dismisses my pilot humor. How do people get pilot humor?
They do it. I don't know why. I don't understand. So anyhow, he said, "The reason I'm here is because of you." And he says, "The reason I'm at American Airlines is because of you."
He had heard your story. He
had read my columns over the years, and you just never know who you affect, who you invite into that cockpit. It's
so true. I mean, look how you were affected. The captain on that flight probably never thought, never see this kid again. He's just going to go on and do something else.
And I tried to find that captain that signed that.
Yeah, that was a question I had.
I never did track him down. I never did. We had an interview with captains, and one of them made it a point to come downstairs, and while I was waiting to hear what the results were, he said he had flown with that captain. So the co-pilot came down, not on that from that trip,
right?
But a co-pilot that had flown with
him at that
point. At that point, he was a retired captain at that point.
Okay,
doing the interviews, but it was.
How cool! How cool would that have been, though, to actually find that guy and let him see? And you don't know; he might know.
Yeah. So. All right, now everybody knows why we fly. So
this is it.
Yeah, this is it.
Once again, we've got a favor to ask. Please invite your friends to the Candid Cockpit podcast. As goofy as we may be, you might actually get some good knowledge from this.
And despite that, consider sending an email with a question or a suggested topic on candidcockpit.com, and we'll mention your name on air with your permission, of course.
And finally, don't forget to say hello. You might be the next Les Abend to your crew.
God, I hope not.
All right, let's talk about layovers. We've talked about rest. We talked about in our takeoff segment delays and rest issues and weather and delays and cancellations. Well, again, that could put us into an unplanned layover, but typically our schedules are built with layovers. We may do a 2-day, 3-day, 4-day, 5-day trip, and we've got layovers in between. And they're kind of interesting because everyone thinks that our job is so glamorous. We get to see the world and see these great sights. Problem is, we get to do that, but we're usually doing it alone. Our family, our loved ones are at home, and we don't get to share these.
We don't share.
Yeah, and that's it's great, but it's not so great. You tell someone what you do for a living, like, "Oh, I'd love to do that." And I said, "Yeah, but your job's pretty good because you're home every night." Granted, we chose to do this job. And with an airplane, you're going someplace, so it's not exactly very easy to go someplace very far away and turn around and come back that same day.
Right.
Hence the layover.
Hence the layovers. and honestly, I mean, not that we want people to have sympathy for us. And, when you tell them, I had a Paris layover, I call it snippets. I mean, it's a lot. We go to so many places in the world that a lot of people don't get the opportunity to see, but we see snippets of it. And most of the time, because of the layover time period and the legality involved, they want us to be efficient.
Right.
They don't want us. They don't want
just
to pay
sitting around
for
on some beach in Aruba for 2 days.
So they want us to move. And so our layovers aren't, the old golden age 60s type, spend 3 days in Paris.
Right.
It's where you get out of town. You get snippets.
You've got typically a typical layover might be in 12 to 15 hours. So you've got time to get from the airport, go to the hotel, get some dinner, get some sleep, get up, have breakfast, and off you go again.
Right.
Now, there are longer layovers, but like you said, efficiency, if airplanes aren't in the sky making money, or aren't in the sky, they're not making money. If pilots aren't in the sky, or flight crews in general, in-flight and pilots, if we're not in the sky, we're not making money. We don't get paid while we're on a layover.
Yeah, absolutely right. And even the international layovers, toward the end of my career, I was going back and across the North Atlantic from Kennedy to London, and I had what they called at the time was a cake trip because I left at 10 o'clock in the morning out of Kennedy. I arrived in London about 10:30, 11 o'clock at night, London time. Mm-hmm. We had dinner, and maybe late beer, late dinner, and then we were up the next morning with a very short layover and headed right back home.
Across.
And we got back at 8 o'clock the next day.
Right.
Normally it's a 3-day cycle because you leave at night, but this one, and I'll tell you what, it was a great trip. I'm not complaining about it by any means, but we stayed right at the airport at Heathrow. And, so that's what layovers can be.
That brings up good points too. We talk about the length of our layovers. There's short stay hotels, long stay hotels.
Right.
So if you have a short stay, they'll try to keep you close to the airport. But again, the things that our hotel committee looks for are things to do, but in a shorter layover, more importantly, are there places to get some food?
Right.
Food and get good rest and good meals. Longer layovers, our company, it's going to has to be in a downtown area, or if it's on an island or someplace where there's a beach or resort, something along those lines. So it's a little bit of a perk, but it's also, again, you can maybe encounter a little bit better rest at a longer layover, where you're not so stressed in trying to find something to do or find something to eat. You've got more options to you.
And help me a little bit, since you're the one doing layovers now. At my airline, we had a committee with the union that would work in conjunction with the companies.
Correct. Ours the same way.
Same way.
Yep.
So, and they would select, hotels based on numerous factors. I mean, there's a lot of things like you were talking about.
There is.
But most airlines do work with the union
to select hotels.
hotels.
Yeah, and the biggest thing, again, it goes right back to safety. The biggest thing they're looking for at a hotel is rest. Can a crew member get good rest at this hotel?
Right.
They're not going to put you in a hotel that's right next to, let's say, the subway in New York City. Well, now that said, one of our hotels happens to be right next to the subway, but it has really good windows. But yeah, and that actually brings up even more detail. This industry is so detail oriented. A lot of the hotels, when you're doing your layover, they're prescribed via our contract that they've got to put you in quiet parts of the hotel. You can't be near an elevator. You can't be over the nightclub. You can't be on the loud side.
You can't be on the first floor.
Yeah, that's another thing.
And that's for security reasons. Yeah.
Really?
Well, yeah.
Now, that one I'm not aware of.
Yeah, that was a requirement for
American. Yeah, I don't think it is with us.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was.
For security. I mean, it makes sense. I get that, but yeah.
So, but there's a lot of factors that go into layovers, and listen, you gotta give it to the company. They gotta save some money. There's a lot of contracts.
It's a fine line. Yeah, it is. It really is. And finding efficiency, but also, they don't want to put you in a Motel 6, but also they don't want to put you in the Ritz. They got to find something. And it's funny, each airline, I could throw some airline names out there that you might have nicer hotels in because
Well, let's just say your airline and my airline, we didn't stay at
the same hotels.
Well, we didn't. Yeah, there was that. But we didn't have numbers in our hotels.
Typically, our hotels do not have numbers in them. Yeah, no, that's a great analogy to put up. But some of the lower cost carriers.
Not that those are bad hotels.
No, I've stayed in some.
Yeah, when I have to pay.
Well, yeah. Cheap airline pilot.
Yeah.
But depending on the airline, it depends on their profitability, quite frankly, what type of flights they're doing. I mean, there might be airlines where they go to super small cities, mainly the regional carriers, and that's the only thing in town, or that might be the nicest hotel in town.
Right.
So again, it's not all within their their capability to do exactly what they want. They have to live with what the best they can find in that city.
They have to contract with the hotel. And, sometimes, it's got to be difficult now with the demand. Hotel rooms are full, and, having a lower base cost or source of revenue from airline crews.
Correct.
It's when they could fill it up with
higher costs. But in that, it's also, at least we're steady throughout the year at the same cost basis.
Right.
Where most hotels through different peak and off peak. So
they balance it.
They do balance out. Well, yeah, which is that's as a rule.
That's above our pilot pay rate.
I'm not involved in that committee.
Yeah. So, Mike, you've been on numerous layovers as I was. Is there one that maybe you could talk about that might be some fun for our listeners?
I had just last week, as a matter of fact.
And by the way, just and I don't mean to interrupt, but we don't always lay over with flight attendants. No. Because a lot of times they're doing a turnaround, or they're only on a certain part of the trip.
Yeah, our schedules, they don't necessarily intertwine. Their entire schedule. We might fly, let's say a 4-day trip, have 5 legs, and I fly with a different set of flight attendants on every leg.
On every leg, but even the hotel.
Even the hotels at night.
Sometimes.
Again, their stay might be a short stay. My stay might be a long stay,
right.
Vice versa. And even some short stay together might not be in the same hotel.
Right.
It all depends.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, the committees, their committee and our committee work together, but different things, different requirements.
One major airline on their policy is not to have pilots and flight attendants. I still haven't figured that one out, but maybe something.
Yeah, it might be another topic later on we can discuss.
But anyhow, I interrupted your layover story.
For me, a layover is I'm not a big fan of the long layovers because again, I'd rather get my flying done and go home.
Go home, yeah.
This last week of flying, I had kind of one of each layover, but they were both great. I had a layover in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. And you don't think of a lot of fun things to do in Raleigh-Durham, North Carolina. We stay right downtown Durham in a nice hotel. Doesn't have a number in it. And there's great eateries and pubs and markets very close by, and about a 7-minute walk down the road to the Durham Bulls. And I happen to be a baseball fan, and I prefer minor league baseball to major league baseball because these are kids that are playing that haven't tasted the big money, so their heart is still in the game.
Right.
The corporate world hasn't gotten involved yet.
Kind of like new hire airline pilots.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. The enthusiasm.
Yeah.
So I decided, I'm going to go down. There was a great afternoon game. Bought a ticket for $26, and I sat second row behind home plate.
I saw the picture.
Well, I did spend $9 on a beer.
Okay.
Well, but it's
the team.
So now $35. So it was, but it was great. It was great to get out and experience the local culture, so to speak, because the place was packed. And we all know that Durham Bulls probably got a little bit of boost to their popularity through a movie, Bull Durham.
Right.
And quite frankly, I'm not going to lie, that's part of what drove me to go. It's like I see the stadium 7 minutes down the road. I'm going to go to a Durham Bulls game.
Sure.
I got the hat and everything. Apparently, this is a newer stadium, so the train doesn't go through the outfield. But the cow is still there that says, hit the cow, win a steak.
Wow.
Didn't happen.
No?
No. There were a lot of home runs, but no one got the cow. And 2 nights later, I've got a 28-hour layover in Aruba. Same thing. I'm not a big fan of those layovers because, I live at the beach, but I love the beach. But it's just I'm sitting there going, okay, I could be flying, and then I could be home. But I had a great first officer. We went out to the hotel's got a little private island. We took the little shuttle out there, hung out with the flamingos and just enjoyed the beach life for a little bit. So some are good. And then you've got some that are in, Syracuse in winter.
Yeah. No, I get that completely after growing up there. Although I did learn to ski.
But the companies try to give you a nice layover because they do understand that you're away from home. So they're trying to do their best to
right.
to accommodate.
But I think, like with any career, any profession, our attitudes change as we get older. And, when we were younger, we wanted to go everywhere and have fun. And, but, now it's as I got to the end of my career, I just like you, I wanted to be home.
Yeah. Do my flying and go home.
Because we checked a lot of boxes as we get into our careers.
We have.
Yeah. So probably more boxes than we wanted to check, but
Still checking.
Still checking, yeah. Well, we should. We should. So I got stories that I can't talk about, but
on air.
I could, but in any case, one of the things that I think is fun that we ought to bring up is that if you've got a long enough layover, you can bring your spouse.
Yeah.
And I remember a Vancouver layover, and what a great town that is. We went all over Vancouver. Just the waterfront is wonderful, and
people are nice.
Yeah. And we had so I brought my wife with me, and the only bad part of that was that we spent a little too much time, and got back to the hotel and rushed out the door. But it turned out that my crew abandoned us. So
maybe they thought the lovebirds need more time.
Yeah, I was trying to figure that out, but till this day,
well, they weren't leaving the airport without you, just the hotel.
Just the hotel. Yeah. So well, maybe they were going to try. I don't know. I know the co-pilot was capable. So
maybe there was some kid in back that just had his wings and he wanted to fly for you. But no, you're right. Again, and a lot of people do bring their spouse or significant other on layovers.
Yeah, and that's a nice benefit.
It is.
If there's a seat, of course, right? We get it.
Yeah, now you're back into standby, and nowadays, as we've already discussed, delays, mechanical, shortage of employees, shortage of airplanes.
Trip gets canceled. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just shortage of seats.
Yeah.
There's fewer airplanes flying right now, but there's more people flying.
Right.
So it's pretty rare. We run right now, typically 7 days a week, 85+% load factor. That's full airplanes.
That's just amazing.
Yeah.
And my wife has got to see the front. She's got to see first class.
Well, at least you guys have first class.
Well, we don't see that anymore because we're paying for our tickets to get on an airplane these days.
It is. And sometimes as a commuter or if you're trying to what we call non-rev in the industry, when you want to just go someplace with your family, sometimes it's just easier and cheaper to buy the ticket.
Oh, yeah. And it takes all the stress out.
Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things people ask is, do we pay for the hotel room and then maybe get reimbursed by the airline? And I don't know what, all our hotel had contracts.
Absolutely.
And we didn't put, unless we were doing our credit card for other stuff.
Incidentals or
something.
Yeah.
At the hotel. But yours is the same.
Same exact way.
I don't think any other airlines.
There may be instances.
Maybe Acme Airlines.
Super. Yeah, right. Is that the one with the Roadrunner?
Yeah.
And again, this kind of goes back to cancellations and delays. And there's a part of the company in the system operations center called crew services, and they kind of tell us where we're going and how we're going if something gets disrupted from our schedule. And they get inundated if there's big delays or big irregular operations. And we've had, and I know this is other airlines as well, you've got a crew that's sitting there at the airport waiting to find out about their hotel, and they're sitting there due to a cancellation. And sometimes they'll just take it in their own hands and, there's a hotel at the airport. Let's get ourselves into rest. I'll put on my credit card and then get reimbursed. And you will always get reimbursed for that. Yeah.
Right. And that's a untypical operation, but sometimes the captain's just kind of has to be the captain and say, you know what, it's been a tough day and we need to get to the hotel, and
just because you're done flying the airplane doesn't mean you stop being a captain.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All the way through, always look out for your crew.
Yep.
They're going to look out for you, hopefully.
Absolutely.
I think that's about covers it for layovers.
Anything else?
No, it's time to go surfing in Aruba.
Really? Aruba. Okay. All right. Well, Captain Mike, we've landed this episode, so to speak. So I think we're parked at the gate, and I think we can kind of wrap up this whole episode. I hope our listeners have kind of gained some insight into our little pilot brains and the airline world, and we appreciate you guys coming aboard, right?
Yeah, we're new at this, so we're still learning things. And we really have so much to tell you about the airline industry. It's just going to be small bits and pieces. As you said, snippets of layovers. You're going to get snippets. But if you want more than snippets, email us, call us, let us know questions we can answer. But as we begin our parking checklist, I just want to ask our listeners once again, spread the word about us. Send us an email, candidcockpit.com. Let us know if you've got a topic you'd like to address on another flight. And with your permission, we'll obviously mention your name as well. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. For you old guys, that's some social media stuff.
Yeah.
And again, check our website, candidcockpit.com.
Remember, don't get on an airplane unless you've listened to Candid Cockpit. Till the next takeoff, have a safe flight.
Have a safe flight.